Welcome to the Talk2Connect podcast. This is the 6th and final episode this season. My name is Lisa Tallroth. Return counselling as a key capability in the EU member state return system. That is the cornerstone of the EU return policy. And in today's podcast, we'll discuss the prospects and challenges for this ambition to become reality. All the Talk2Connect pod and webcasts aim to bring caseworkers within voluntary return and reintegration closer together, to share experience and insights, whether you work for a state agency or an NGO, whether you work in Europe or in countries of origin. And all previous episodes are available on YouTube. You search for Talk2Connect Return. And as we're closing in on the end of 2023, we want to wrap up and remind ourselves of what we have learned within the Talk2Connect project this year. And to help me do that, and also to start preparing for what is awaiting, I have invited 3 distinguished guests. Myself, I am sitting in Stockholm in Sweden, but from Brussels I have Christina Jespersen, working for ICMPD as a senior project manager. Welcome to Talk2Connect.
First of all, thank you for having me. Within ICMPD, we have a program called the Return and Reintegration Facility, which is a member state-led initiative to allow member states to work together on areas of common interest within the field of return and reintegration. And within this project, I am the senior project manager. So I head up our project innovation and development and implementation unit.
And for full disclosure, ICMPD has also been supporting Talk2Connect this year through a grant. And Joris Kennis, are you today in Brussels or where are you at?
I'm in Brussels.
You are?
Thank you. Yes.
Welcome to Talk2Connect. You have been one of the facilitators at our webinars, so I imagine the listeners recognize your voice. Mm-hmm. You are a senior migration consultant.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Long experience from different parts of the field. And also a long career within Fedasil, the Belgian state agency.
That's right, Lisa.
And then from the Swedish Migration Agency, Madeleine Fält, welcome.
Thank you, Lisa.
You are a return counsellor on an everyday basis. So tell us shortly about your work.
Well, I work as a return counsellor, as you mentioned, but I do more than counselling. I do case management within the returnee, like identification, for an example. But for most of my day, I have counseling sessions with returnees and migrants.
So maybe you are the one amongst us that know this business at its core the best. But you know, getting closer to the end of a year, it's always good to remind yourself what you have learned. And from my perspective, working with Talk2Connect, of course, the field of return and reintegration has grown. I have learned so much. But what do you think you will remember from 2023? From 2023, have you learned anything or observed anything from this field we all are working within? Return and reintegration?
In May, I was one among the few lucky one who got to travel to Warsaw and participate in the Frontex curriculum that Jesper told us yesterday about. So from the day I got home from Warsaw, I have a new point of view to how I do return counselling.
Oh, how interesting! Tell us,
yes.
what kind of eye opener did you get at the training?
Oh, that is a big question, but I think that it's the individual. There is no one size fits all. You have to bear in mind that it's every single counseling session. It's a new individual, but it's also a new start of the day. It's yesterday when I met him. It might be a different story today because he might add on something that is new for me. So I think that the communication and cultural aspect was an eye-opener.
Interesting. Christina, what have you learned this year?
Well, Lisa, this year has been, I think, very key in as sort of a culmination of the realization that we must work together across the member states and countries of origin in order to learn together and to ensure that we do the best we can to support migrants who find themselves in a situation in Europe where they either want or need to return to their country of origin. It's not going to be an endeavor that any one member state can do individually or any one counselor can do individually. And I think this year has been a year of realization, coming to really a pinnacle that we must engage with each other, learn from each other, and indeed put into practice those core elements that go into building that capability that you also exemplified throughout the Talk2Connect webcasts and webinars and podcasts. And indeed, especially looking at the webinars where counselors and experts had an opportunity to interact, I think is really a very good example of this collective realization that we must work together to offer and to promote voluntary return as a solution that could be workable for a lot of migrants who find themselves in a situation where they need to return to their country of origin.
And these webinars you're referring to, that has been a way to talk across national borders within the EU, but also trying to bridge EU to the countries of origin. We have had service providers, the local service providers participating as well. And Joris, you have been a facilitator to many of these webinars. What have you learned or observed this last year?
The first thing, Lisa, that comes in my mind is a bit in the name of Talk2Connect, is in the notion of connection. For example, the actively looking for connection between counselor and returning migrant. It's not just waiting until something occurs or until you can give some information, but it's actively looking for a kind of connection, for dialogue, for a mutual understanding. This is the first thing. The second is also what Christina mentioned, connection with post-arrival actors. So making this bridge pre-departure, post-arrival. And the third one also is a very important one. I think it is finding connection with what you locally as person do together with the migrant in the best connection with how does this articulate within the wider view of managing migration and policymakers. So, and I found these three elements in the webinars and also in the breakout rooms.
And in our last webcast that streamed on December 13, now available on YouTube, I need to emphasize, we did a short recap of all the topics we've touched upon during the year. And our guest was Mari Juric, who is the first EU return coordinator, the first ever on this position, and she's been on the job since May 2022. And I know that you listened to her in this webcast. You remember maybe that I asked her about the role of the return counsellors and if and how that will evolve in the upcoming years. And let's listen shortly to what she said.
So now looking at the role of return counselling, well, as you know, for almost 2 years now, EU has had the dedicated strategy for assisted voluntary return and reintegration. And this strategy has underlined importance and is essentially built on return counselling as a key competence to promote voluntary returns. In the operational strategy that we have established, we actually, in the high-level network, we try to take return counseling even further. So we would like it to become a part of all return case management, irrespective we are talking about voluntary returns or involuntary returns. And we would like that return counseling is understood and seen as a key capability, and it should become a core professional competence in all member states' return systems. So I think this is the main message from what we are trying to achieve in relation to return counseling.
That was Marie Juric, EU Return Coordinator, telling us a bit about how the role of the return counseling will evolve and take a better place. A key capability, she says, at the very core of the return systems in the EU system. What do you think? What would it take to get there? What do you think, Christina?
Well, Lisa, I was very appreciative of Maria Juric's message because as I think the audience of Talk2Connect has known for quite a while, the counseling and the interaction with that case managers as well as counselors have with a migrant who is a potential returnee is pivotal, or as to the kind of decision that a migrant is enabled to make. So I thought it was quite encouraging to hear that we know that that the EU return coordinator placed high value and importance on counseling as a central element of the whole return process. But to hear her send this very strong message was very encouraging. And I think one of the things that she also said at some point yesterday on the last webcast was that there are a lot of actors who have a counseling role or take a counseling role. So making it a core capability of case managers as well as counselors across the different kinds of organizations who come into contact with migrants who are potential returnees would mean that we need to agree on many of the core elements that go into high quality counseling. And I think that the efforts, we heard also Frontex talk about their work plan of how to roll out their training, which is currently has some curriculum, but they intend to build upon it and they intend to roll out. I think that we need to concentrate also within programs like the RRF, and the other umbrella organizations who gather together, counseling organizations. We need to come to focus on making available high quality training and make it available for as many counselors as possible. And I can tell you that the Return and Reintegration Facility, the RRF, has just approved a 2-year work plan where return and reintegration counseling and developing additional modules on training, focusing on specific types of returnees with specific vulnerabilities or specific countries of origin. That is going to be very an important part of our 2-year program. So I think in summary, it requires making available tools, training to any and all actors who find themselves in the role of counselor across the entire group of EU member states.
Before we reach that ambition,
Yes,
to be a key capacity for that the return counselors are a key capacity. But Madeleine, what did you think when you heard Marie Juric yesterday pointing out your profession as a key in the system?
Of course, I was flattered, but also I think it was encouraging. But and I hope that everyone who listened to it also felt that she was talking to us, because when I talked to my colleagues in Sweden, but also when I met colleagues in Warsaw from different EU members, there are a lot of people who have worked in this field for many years, and we have a lot of skills, but we can share them together, and we need to, I think it was Stein or Jaspers who said yesterday that we have to build on that. The training is not a fast track to be able to do counseling. You need to build up on something, and we need to make sure that all member states have something to build up on. It's not just here's how you do counseling, because you need to have a lot of other aspects
in place.
Bring that together.
Yeah, like what did you do? What are you thinking of? What else needs to be in place?
In place needs to be that we have like a common ground for what is return counseling, and that we are taught when the return directive. Bear in mind that I think that we talk about how we do different things in the member states, but there are a lot of similarities also, and I think we're forgetting those. We need to focus on those too, and see, okay, we have this, okay, what could we make better? I was very happy to hear also that it's not just a training the week, because I think it's few people who will be able to participate to that. We need to build up on something, I think, and we have a lot of skills and inspiring and experienced colleagues.
But one question that came to Marie Joris during the webcast, and which I recognize from this year, is the feeling of being a bit jammed as a counselor. I mean, you also have to operate within a structure, and the importance of having agreements in place, being able to refer to a reintegration partner on the arrival side, and there still are many situations where these things are not in place, that you as a return counselor on the European side, you don't have that much to offer actually. So I was thinking when I listened to Marie Joris that maybe she puts a bit too much pressure on the counselors that they will solve this problem. I mean, when many things needs to be arranged on a more high level structure. What do you think, Joris?
Lisa, first of all, it was good to hear Marie Joris talk in her, because after years of trying, giving shape to return counseling, that it's recognized as a strong element. Is it really a specialism? At least it has to be a core competence, maybe within wider competences of accompanying migrants in their return. It's good also to hear you say, Madeleine, that you have already some experience and that you are looking for kind of common ground. What's a bit the same for us? What are the basics where we can find over the different nationalities, and where can we find this common ground? On the other hand, I think you cannot put everything on the shoulder of the return counselor. This is a bit what you ask, Lisa. Is it there that we find all the responsibility at the end, also if return, yes or not, will happen? I don't think so. I think that you have to build around this a supportive environment, a supportive organization that gives you also the freedom, a bit of trial and error even. And also when Madeleine says every new talk with a migrant is new also. It can be very different. So I think there must be at least that space that you go along with the returning migrant, and that you have to admit not to have instant responses, not to have all the solutions at hand. No, you are limited as counselor in who you are and what you can do for the returning migrant. So on the other hand, Talk2Connect has revealed the added value, especially also in the breakout rooms, that this talk to each other and to admit that something worked very good in your context, other less. So.
And one thing I think came clear when we put together counselors working for NGOs and counselors working for state agencies is of course the differences in their resources and of course and also the demands they have from their employer or for the organization, for the state if they're working for the government. And the time factor keeps coming up, that if you are working for a state agency, you often feel more pressured to reach closure, whereas we know that counseling can take time and to move someone mentally from a situation of crisis to a more solution-oriented way of thinking. That is something that takes time, and this I think this sounds like a key challenge. What are your thoughts on this, and how this how to work around that? What do you think, Christina?
Well, Lisa, you're absolutely right. One of the things that about the complexity and the different kinds of cross pressures, but I think that it's something that also came out, I think, in the Talk2Connect sessions, is that the different roles of the case managers, the counselors who are outside of state authorities, can have different roles, and they are able to offer different things, and they can actually work in complementarity. Of course, it gives the opportunity for the potentially returning migrant to also have a choice of what kind of issues you take to which of your interlocutors. Of course, there's your case manager has different stakes than if you meet an independent NGO counselor who can give you a different kind of space. And I think we need to acknowledge that it takes all these different spaces and interlocutors to accompany a migrant to their decision about their future. Interestingly, also, I think in the course of the webcasts and the webinars, we also started talking about life counseling rather than return counseling per se. So from the point of view of a returning migrant, these are decisions about the next steps in life as much as it is about a decision about return. So I think that a case manager may not necessarily have the time to do a thorough life counseling. However, if there's a good cooperation with NGOs who can offer this, it would maybe be a little bit of a relief that you would be able to refer the person to maybe have a chat with someone that they could talk more broadly with. For example, an NGO return counseling service. I think we need to acknowledge, and we need to try to put to activate our different roles, but all in the service of migrants who are trying to take a decision about what to do as a next step in their life, as they now have a situation where they are in the need to make a move from where they're at now.
What are your thoughts on this, Madeleine? Do you feel the need for an organization to maybe support you in this work? Someone who has more time to do counseling in that larger perspective Christina is mentioning?
Absolutely, because I recognize myself what you're describing, Christina, because it's not unusual that you have a conversation and the migrant says, no, I will not return. It's better for me to stay here. And of course you can end the meeting and like, okay, so you will not voluntarily return, but you can also ask more questions. Okay, why is that? And what are your plans? In many ways, there is easy to say no. The hard question for when you continue asking question is, okay, so what are your plans? you're telling me you're going to stay. You're not going to go back to your country of origin. To be able to continue that conversation, it's often I don't have the time for that, because they're not up to it. They're facing a lot of problems, and they're worried about how will my daily life be from now on. And I wish I had the time, but unfortunately I don't. And I'm not sure that I'm able to speak to him or her about that topic. But I think I have to ask the questions. If I don't do that, I'm not sure that that the migrant had made a decision based on information.
So looking into the next year, to the future, I hear that you wished you had more time to each and every individual, but otherwise, what do you feel as a return counselor that would be of value for you to know more about, or what kind of capacity building would be of benefit for you in your work, Madeleine?
I think one of the best parts that I got from Talk2Connect, from the webcast, is that I have a voice and I have a face of, for instance, from someone from ETTC. So
the service provider in Iraq.
The service provider in Iraq, yes. Which a lot of the person who I meet, they will meet them in a couple of weeks or month. And before, it felt so far away. It's not that the world is smaller, but it feels closer right now, because I can easily just pick up the phone or send an email, and I know who is answering me, and I know who my returnee will meet in a few weeks, and I can actually tell them, okay, this is Jin. That makes it a lot easier, I would say. So more, if I can reach that connection with more service providers, I think that might affect my work in a positive way.
What do you think of that as a way forward within this capacity building, Christina? To focus on showing what's happening on the other side of the arrival side.
I couldn't agree more. I think the more you know about the situation, the better a counselor you become. You, not just in the sense of you're able to give more information and give more detail, but you can bring a sort of a sense of recognition about the situation, a sense of I can accompany you in help in your thought process as you make your decision, because I know the people who you're going to meet, even though I can't profess to know exactly what your daily life is going to be. At least I have made it my business to understand as much as I can about the particularities of the next steps in your journey. So I think the connection that you referred to, Madeleine, I think it is invaluable to know more about who are the people that will be catching on the other side, who will be available for reintegration counseling, where you as a counselor left off from return counseling. I think the more you can make those links, and I think, Joris, you also referred to the importance of making those links, the better. Yeah, if you think about it, advising someone to make a decision about return does not seem very credible if you don't understand what return looks like once you arrive on the other side. So those links, I fully agree, that's highly important.
Joris, if you were to make a wish for the next upcoming year, and on what should be focus for the training for return counselors?
That's a big question. A lot to wish for. Just coming back, I appreciate enormous Madeleine that she says sometimes when we talk with migrants, we feel like stuck. How can this continue, especially when return is not really expressed as a viable option? So at that moment that you feel the need of widen your perspective in the hope that also the perspective of the migrant will widen and maybe consider return. So widening this perspective, I think this is a wish for the coming sessions, but also in terms of how will governments organize their return management? How do they see the cooperation with NGOs? There are multiple stakeholders. This is a network around the migrant. This is the reality, and a referring network to each other. So how do they see this kind of cooperation between NGOs, social midfield, and NGOs? So this could be an issue also for this, what you could call multiple stakeholders governance, maybe. And then third, it's so important that we recognize the context in which the counseling is happening. Is it in a return center? Is it in a return desk where migrants are coming with questions, or maybe in reception facilities, or even outreach context? So the context, I think, is really a determinant of how you can do your counseling, and also how your activity will look like. So this is my third wish, in fact, taking account and focusing on the different contexts. But Lisa, it's also an experience for all participants to be there. As Madeleine said, that you have seen the faces of the other, that you feel kind of working all together on a broader project of trying to help people who have to return. So it's nice if you could achieve this in the coming sessions.
And so I take notes here for upcoming sessions. We hope to be able to, in some way, continue this work we have done within Talk2Connect. Do you have any ideas how we could better reach out to more people? Tips are welcome.
I say this for working for the SMA, because an agency, but we have to, I think, I say connect the dots, because I think it's all come down, at least in my perspective, to the strategy on voluntary return. Because if I know why I do something, it might not seem so important for me at the moment because I have a lot of other things on my mind. But if I know that, okay, why I do this, because it helps someone else. If we ask ourselves why we do certain things, because we're not always thinking is why we do this. It might not seem very important to me at the moment because I have a lot of other things on my mind. But if I can ask myself why, and many times it comes down to the strategy on voluntary return. And if I understand that, I think that we will see it that we are a part of something and we are working together. And if we bear that in mind, I think it will be an way forward. And I think that is something that we have to talk about. That is, it's not up to the individual countries in the EU. We do it together.
I believe that was some great last words. If you don't feel you want to add anything, Joris or Christina, then I want to thank all three of you for joining me today in this podcast where we have summarized some of the learnings from 2023. And as we know by now, we have more to do in the next year and the years to come, and this is work in progress to build the capacity so that return counseling can become a major key player within the field of return in Europe. So thank you so much, Joris Kennis, Senior Migration Consultant. Thank you, Christina Jespersen, Senior Project Manager at ICMPD, and thank you, Madeleine Fält, Return Counselor at Swedish Migration Agency. Thank you for joining me today, and I wish you a happy new year. So this was the last episode of the Talk2Connect podcasts this season. My name is Lisa Tallroth, and all our pod and webcasts are available at YouTube and the RRF website. Jon Thunqvist did today's editing. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
This podcast is a production from the Swedish Migration Agency, produced with the financial assistance of the European Union and contracted by ICMPD through the Talk2Connect grant. And the content is the sole responsibility of the Swedish Migration Agency and not reflecting the position of the European Union or ICMPD.